the case of Senator Al Franken, here is what we have. He admitted to some of it, and we have irrefutable photographic evidence. Let me explain. Actress, model, radio host Leanne Tweeden, who's been on this program many times, came forward today with stunning allegations against Democratic Senator Al Franken that he is now admitting to and he is now apologizing for. Now, according to Tweeden, during a 2006 USO tour in Afghanistan, then citizen Al Franken had written a skit where he kissed Tweeden, and Franken demanded that they, quote, rehearse it backstage. After Tweeden refused, she described what allegedly happens next at a press conference earlier today. Watch this.
He just put his hand on the back of my head and he mashed his face against, I mean, it happened so fast, and he just mashed his lips against my face, and he stuck his tongue in my mouth so fast. And all I can remember is that his lips were really wet and it was slimy. In my mind, I called him fish lips the rest of the trip because that's just what it reminded me of. I don't know why. And he stuck his tongue down my mouth, and I remember I pushed him off with my hands. And I just remember I almost punched him, because every time I see him now, like, my hands clench into fists, and I'm sure that's probably why. And I said, if you ever do that to me again, I'm not going to be so nice about it the second time. I was violated. I just felt like, you know, he betrayed my trust, and obviously that is not what I wanted.
And it gets worse from there. Look at this photo. While leaving from Afghanistan, Tweeden fell asleep, and Franken proceeded, as you can see there, to grope her. Now, Tweeden says that she didn't even know what happened until after she got home and looked at pictures of this trip. Now, Tweeden further detailed the incident at a news conference earlier today. Let's take a look.
There's a photo of Al doing his, you know, this on my breast, like looking at the camera, just kind of smirking and smiling, like, hey, look at me. He just thought he could get away with it, and that it was okay, and that it was funny. Nothing like that is ever funny. I mean, is it funny if he does that to your sister or your daughter or your wife? In context of already assaulting me backstage and all the little petty things he was doing to belittle me and how he treated me, and sort of, you know, in succession, and then it ended with that. Look, I was afraid to speak out 11 years ago. I wanted to say something, and there were people around me who said, oh my God, you will get annihilated and you will never work in this town again. And I was afraid of that.
And this afternoon, Leanne Tweeden did an interview, and it got very emotional. Take a look.
It's not a feel-good thing. I still feel sort of embarrassed about it. You know, you always... I don't want to be cliche, but, you know, you talk about trying to leave the world a better place for your kids, you know? Sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about.
I didn't think I was going to do that, but, you know, you do. You want to leave, you know, you try to set examples for your children, right? You want to leave the world a better place.
Now, I also interviewed Leanne Tweeden on my radio show earlier today. Listen in. What do you think should happen? I know they were trying to pressure you in the press conference. Does something like that warrant? Does he belong in the Senate?
You know, I'm not calling for him to step down. That's not why I came out with this. I just want other people. If, you know, there might be other girls that he did this to, and obviously you have one on the phone right now that's talking with me, and there might be others.
Al Franken did issue a statement apologizing for the photo, but claims to not remember the backstage kissing incident. It reads in part, quote, I don't know what was in my head when I took that picture, and it doesn't matter. There's no excuse. I look at it now. I feel disgusted with myself. It isn't funny. It's completely inappropriate. Now, Franken is also agreeing to a Senate ethics investigation, which Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell first called for, and then Democrats like Chuck Schumer, Claire McCaskill quickly supported because they had no choice. An ethics investigation, in my mind, takes too long. And by the way, is it a delay tactic? It's also funny how some Republicans are giving Franken, well, are they giving him a pass by only calling for an investigation? Leanne Tweeden is also weighing in and saying it should go even further than that by having an outside investigation into the senator's inexcusable actions. Now, what Franken has admitted to, which we have photographic evidence right there, and what he is accused of doing is pretty downright creepy. But sadly, it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Al Franken, things you probably won't hear on any other show. For example, on the Senate floor in 2010, Senator Franken described his USO trips and called Leanne Tweeden beautiful. Watch this.
I was kind of a co-host with a beautiful woman named Leanne Tweeden, and we do comedy routines, and we'd introduce music, we'd introduce the cheerleaders.
Now, Franken is also being accused of harassing a second woman, Melanie Morgan, a radio TV personality, also the co-founder of the website Media Equalizer. Morgan is alleging that back in 2000, while appearing with Franken on Bill Maher's show on ABC, Politically Incorrect, the two had a heated debate on camera, which then continued backstage. According to Melanie Morgan, Franken then got her phone number from one of the show's producers and called her 3 separate times, she said, harassing her until Morgan threatened to call the police. Now, I interviewed Melanie Morgan about these accusations of harassment on my radio show earlier today. Let's listen in.
Melanie, what do people to think when we don't have a picture, like in the case of Leanne? How do people sort through and get to the truth?
That is a great question, and it's one, as a journalist of over 30 years experience, I wrestle with every single day. You know, you have to take these instances and these testimonials by different women, and it's usually women, although in Hollywood, as we've learned, sometimes it's men, and you have to look at the whole context in which these allegations are made. You know, I wanted to give Judge Roy Moore the benefit of the doubt because it was 40 years ago that he was accused of doing some inappropriate things. I think that the people of Alabama are definitely going to make a judgment on what they think is true and what is not true. I can only speak as to the truth that I experienced, which was a very aggressive and almost obsessive behavior that Senator Al Franken displayed towards me when he was a writer and a performer on Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher.
Now, like in the case of Senate candidate Roy Moore, these are all very serious allegations that need to be fully investigated, in this case by the Senate Ethics Committee. And to be fair, we did reach out to Senator Franken. We did invite him on the show to tell his side of the story. You just heard part of my radio interviews with Leanne Tweeden and Melanie Morgan. Now, we also invited those that had accused Roy Moore on this program. We've also reached out to Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi. So far, they didn't get back to us. No comment. Now, when it comes to Senator Al Franken, here's what you probably haven't heard. He has a long history of making all kinds of vicious, vile, completely out-of-line comments. He's also a massive hypocrite when it comes to sexual harassment. For example, in 1995, he was working on Saturday Night Live on a, quote, skit where he suggested drugging and raping Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes. He said at the time, quote, I give the pills to Leslie Stahl, then when Leslie's passed out, I take her to the closet and rape her. And that's why you never see Leslie until February, or when she passes out, I put her in various positions and take pictures of her. What kind of person is making jokes about drugging and raping women? Then in 2000, Al Franken wrote a, quote, so-called satirical article for Playboy magazine with the headline, Pornorama. Most of it is too vulgar to read on TV, but in part, one part in particular, Franken wrote, I'm talking about the Internet, which is a terrific learning tool. For example, a couple of years ago when he was 12, my son used the Internet for a 6th grade report on bestiality. And in the article, Franken goes on to fantasize about a machine that would perform oral sex on him. And it gets worse. In 2008, when Franken was running for Senate, he was forced to apologize for what he wrote in Playboy and his crude and appalling comments about Leslie Stahl. But in his new book, Franken actually said that he faked those apologies in order to win votes. His own words. He writes, to say I was sorry for writing a joke was to sell out my career, to sell out who I'd been my entire life. And I wasn't sorry that I had written Pornorama or pitched that stupid Leslie Stahl joke at 2 in the morning. I was just doing my job. So I guess based on his own words from this point forward, we can only assume that any apology from Senator Grope, it will only be lies in order to win votes in the future. Examples of Franken's despicable behavior don't end there. During a Friars Club roast of Rob Reiner, Franken made jokes about infant rape. How sick do you have to be to make jokes about raping babies? Then you have Senator Franken explaining how he considered calling Republicans, quote, gay when they didn't attend a hearing on an LGBT bill. Watch this.
we had a bill called the end discrimination in Employment Non-Discrimination Act. So no Republican showed up for the hearing, which I had never seen before. I've been there for 4 or 5 months, and this is the first hearing I've been in where a whole party just didn't show up. So I'm sort of last in line, and I think of saying, like, I think it's a shame that none of the gay members of the committee showed up.
So that's with the devil on one side. So.
Well, the devil was saying, tell the joke, it'll kill.
To top it all off, there's this photo from 2000 of Al Franken actually, again, groping Joy Behar on a red carpet. Now, maybe they thought it was funny, but it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially in light of the photo we saw with Leanne Tweeden. Looks repulsive. He doesn't even try to hide it. In 2 cases, he's literally posing for the camera. It makes you wonder, are there other photos Franken doing the same thing? Just to recap quickly, Franken is accused of groping and kissing a woman, accused of harassing another. He's made comments about drugging and raping at women and is also homophobic, clearly. Doesn't end there. Senator Al Franken is also a hypocrite when it comes to women speaking out about sexual abuse. Just take a look at some of his tweets. While we must address sexual harassment, reforming arbitration laws will ensure survivors can seek justice in court. Thanks to courageous people who have shared #MeToo stories, including Senator Heitkamp and Senator Arano and Senator Claire McCaskill and Senator Warren. Now, Franken also praised the women who exposed Harvey Weinstein. It's kind of hypocritical. Think about this for a second. Just 1 second tonight. That picture of Leanne Tweeden, just for 1 second, you see that got released today. Imagine it was showing a Republican. Imagine the president, Trump, was in that picture. How would the media act on that issue tonight? They would be apoplectic. It would be the biggest news story of the year. They'd be breathlessly condemning the incident, demanding that person resign immediately, not just calling for an ethics committee hearing. Tonight, Senator Al Franken, well, he should be ashamed, as he said he is, because it is repulsive. Leanne Tweeden is asleep. We have to ask again, given this information, everything we now know. Now, considering everyone's raising questions, who's fit for this office and who's fit for that office? Is Senator Franklin fit for office? Now, Senator Franken clearly is a pretty sick, twisted individual with a warped sense of humor in his own mind that really isn't funny, but his actions do need to be evaluated. At the end of the day, it will be the people in his home state that decide. And what's really shocking, what's really outrageous, is that Senator Franken is not alone when it comes to accusations of sexual misconduct against members of Congress. According to a new office compliance numbers that were released today, since 1997, 15 million of your taxpayer dollars have been used to settle allegations of sexual misconduct, discrimination, and other cases against members of Congress. Why don't they pay themselves? In other words, you're subsidizing their behavior. And for years, it's been kept secret, even though there have been 264 cases settled. Now, there are also reports about what's being called the Capitol Hill creep list, which helps warn people about which members of Congress and congressional employees to avoid. And finally tonight, a quick update on the Clintons' day of reckoning. For years, we have been shedding a light on the allegations of sexual misconduct by Bill Clinton and how Hillary smeared all of those accusers, and all of their friends did. They smeared, slandered, besmirched. We went into it in great detail last night in our opening monologue. We broke it down in all its detail. We encourage you, if you didn't see it, go back. You may want to see it. So now, after nearly 30 years of covering for Bill Clinton, now the media is finally realizing, oh, wait a second, Bill Clinton, we kind of enabled him. He is a sexual predator. Take a look at some of these headlines. One from Vox. It says, Bill Clinton should have resigned. What he did to Monica Lewinsky was wrong and should have paid the price. The New York Times even says, what about Bill Clinton? What about Bill's sexual misconduct debate revised questions about Clinton? We have to ask, what took everyone in the liberal mainstream media so long? Is it because they are Democrats and they like their policies? It's time they all come forward. They enabled that abusive, predatory behavior for decades. And by the way, as a result, many women suffered. We have a lot more to come.